Our liturgy today is all drama, with waving green palms at first, and then Pontius Pilate washing his palms to try to separate himself from Jesus' crucified and bloody palms on that cross. And the whole of this together is the passion narrative. Passion being emotion. The passion also come to be defined as Christ's death. This I know to be true, that God longs for us still, with a deep and abiding passion, always has and always will. Today is also a day of poetry. James Weldon Johnson, in his poem Creation, said, "And God stepped out on space, and he looked around and said, 'I'm lonely. I'll make me a world.'" And the poet goes on to say that God took light in those almighty hands and balled them up and made the sun. And there were plans to be made, of course, the whole of the cosmos, but it wasn't enough just yet. So then God sat down on the side of a hill that you could think, by a deep, wide river. He sat down with his head in his hands. God thought and thought, till God thought, "I'll make me a man." And finally scooped out of the river clay and shaped humanity in God's own image and breathed the breath of life into that clay. Now, why am I telling you this? Because in the beginning, there were palms. In the beginning, there was a whole lot of green. There were a whole lot of palms. Because the world was one big garden. But green palms weren't enough for God to love so passionately and to enjoy all of creation with. So God created us to love and to be loved in that worldwide garden. But as humans, we have squandered the creation that was placed into our hands to care for. First, in the garden, surrounded by those green palms, we rejected it because it wasn't enough to just be with God in the garden. To just be. So then we ruined the gift of free will with all of humanity. Humanity which was molded by those divine hands. We ruined it by choosing violence. Again and again and again. Violent words, violent deeds. Each time choosing violence, a choice to reject the peaceful image of God. And yet God still longed for us. Hurt and wounded, but longed for us. And when the Word made flesh, Jesus rode into Jerusalem on that donkey, a peaceful procession. The response was Rome's tight fist. Because, of course, Rome feared a riot and an insurrection. Rome saw the people's palm branches and those outstretched hands crying, "Hosanna," which means, "Save us, God, save us." And Rome thought, "I'll make me an example of this man." Pontius Pilate tried to wash his hands of it all. He submerged his palms in a bowl of water to wash away his guilt. And yet his name, infamous now, is remembered in the creed to this day. He could not separate himself from what he was seeing. The palms he saw, the palms nailed to that cross, were of course innocent. tree, which is, of course, a human invention. God came to us and we met God with capital punishment, our human invention. As followers of Jesus, we say, we claim that he is King of Kings. He is Lord of Lords. There is none above him. But we are a part of the crowd who gave him the cross of thorns, taking from the garden something beautiful and twisting it to be violent. That is our human invention. So Jesus was condemned between two criminals or two bandits with that crown on, and they mocked him, though they were in the same place as him without any hope. They were lower than low. Now, rank is a peculiar human invention as well. Rank can take on as many forms as it wants to culturally. It changes. And I learned recently that in the British Navy, for example, a chaplain, unlike other places, a chaplain in the British Navy has no rank. The chaplain assumes the rank of the person they are speaking to. So when the chaplain talks to an admiral, suddenly they are both admirals. And when a chaplain talks to the person whose first day is there, the lowest below, the chaplain is right there with them. Jesus was condemned to death with the lowest of the low. But the sign above his head still said King. How could he be both? How could he have both the lowest and the highest of ranks? And it is because he is the truest kind of king. To give up all rank, all power, all glory, and to take on instead our pain. To reach out to us again. It is Jesus, the way, the truth, the life, who took on our obsession with retribution and power to show us that it is not the way of love that God is calling us and freely inviting us to live by and to live freely by. It is the hope of the cross. The hope of the cross is for us to finally give up our bloodlust, our addiction to violence, and instead extend our open hands to each other. To give up tight fists, ready to fight, to refrain from pointing fingers, ready to blame, and instead to turn back time to the beginning when all palms were open. Palms were used as they were intended to tend the garden and to be raised up in gratitude and praise. Because when palms are open, this world can change. When palms are open, we can change. When palms are open, the church can be changed. You know what you can't do with palms wide open? Drive a tank across the Ukraine. You know what you can't do with a palm wide open? Carry an AR-15 into a school. When your palms are open, you can feel the heat of another made in the image of God. And you are both safe in that embrace when you take each other's hands. If the world is ever to look like a garden again, it's our palms that need to be ready to hold on to each other, to extend to each other, to join hands, palm to palm, to make that stand hand in hand for justice, to put an end to violence. Because God longs for us with a deep and abiding love, a passion that we've seen will embrace even our man-made to the beginning.